The plane was plummeting rapidly. Ethan's white moonlight. Lily was so terrified she had a heart attack. I stopped Ethan from unbuckling his seatbelt and snatched the medication from his hand, throwing it to her. Yet, he still became the only casualty of this flight accident. After his death, we got engaged, married, and I became pregnant. It all happened as if it was meant to be. But when I gave birth, complications arose. Struggling desperately on the operating table, I cried out for help, only to see Ethan, now the hospital's vice president, standing expressionless as he watched me lose every bit of life left in me. Emma, now you understand how terrifying it is for a patient to be left to die, don't you? His cold words echoed in my mind as the darkness closed in. I realized then that he had always hated me for surviving. This time, I let him unbuckle his seatbelt. Go ahead. Fulfill your duty to save lives. The plane was plummeting rapidly. Screams and cries filled the cabin, rising and falling in waves. Except for Ethan. No one noticed Lily clutching her chest, quietly pleading for help. The in-flight announcement repeated calmly. The plane is experiencing a malfunction. Passengers, please fasten your seatbelts. Ethan raised his hand to unbuckle his seatbelt without hesitation, as if he had no regard for his own life. It wasn't some heroic duty, it was about saving Lily. If I hadn't accidentally found a photo of him kissing her, I might have believed his actions were motivated purely by medical ethics. But the truth was, he couldn't bear to see his beloved white moonlight die. As the plane jolted violently, passengers without seatbelts were flung into the air and slammed back down, many suffering serious injuries. Worried about him getting hurt, I tried to stop him, prying his hands off the seatbelt buckle. I threw the heart medication to Lily and reminded Ethan that even if he wanted to save others, he should first ensure his own safety. The accident left 1 dead, 5 critically injured, and 8 with minor injuries. Lily was the fatality. That very night, Ethan proposed to me. We've been through life and death together, he said. His tone so heartfelt that I was moved to tears. But when I confronted him with the photo of him and Lily, he became enraged, shoving my pregnant self down the stairs. All the affection he had shown disappeared in an instant, leaving only a searing hatred. Emma, you're a doctor. Watching a patient die in front of you, don't you have nightmares? I hemorrhaged and was rushed to the hospital, lying on the operating table, weak and desperate. I waited for a doctor to arrive, but the only one who entered was Ethan. He looked at me, emotionless, as my life ebbed away. Emma, now you understand how terrifying it is for a patient to be abandoned, don't you? Selfish as you are, you finally know the pain Lily felt. Good. After 10 years of marriage, his eyes held no pain or pity for me, only venomous disdain that cut me like a blade. In this second life, I made way for Ethan to save Lily. Emma, good thing you didn't stop me this time. He sneered, his words sending a chill down my spine. Ethan had been reborn too. This time, Lily's luck was exceptional. After taking the medication and receiving CPR from Ethan, she gradually recovered. But Ethan wasn't so lucky. Without his seatbelt on, he was violently thrown during the turbulence, hitting his head and losing consciousness. His body was riddled with fractures, especially in his hands. He became one of the critically injured passengers. After 3 days in the ICU, he was transferred to a regular room. The doctor warned that if he didn't wake up within 7 days, he would become a vegetable. Ethan's mother cried and screamed at the hospital, accusing me of not looking after her son. She grabbed my clothes, wailing, "He's my only son. I raised him alone all these years. And now this happens. Emma, if anything happens to Ethan, you'll have to pay with your life." I sneered. Ethan's father had passed away early, and his mother had raised him single-handedly, a gifted student. He had excelled in academics and eventually earned his doctorate with ease. My family's connections had helped him secure a vice presidency at the hospital. Yet his mother always felt no one was good enough for her precious son. Not even me, the daughter of the hospital's president. A crowd gathered, many pulling out their phones to record. Not far away, the door to a hospital room opened, and a woman stepped out, her face obscured by a mask and cap. I recognized her silhouette instantly, pointing toward Lily. I yanked my hand free from Ethan's mother and said coldly, "If you want someone to pay, go after her. That's Ethan's beloved. He unbuckled his seatbelt to save her, and now he's unconscious because of it." Lily froze. When she heard my words, she turned to flee, but Ethan's mother lunged at her, slapping her hard. Her mask and cap were torn off, exposing her face to the cameras. "Lily, it's you," Ethan's mother screamed, clawing at her face. "If he doesn't wake up, I'll kill you." "Are you crazy?" Lily shouted back, her face twisting in annoyance and fury, no longer the delicate image she usually portrayed. "I didn't beg your son to save me. He threw himself at me like a desperate fool. What does that have to do with me? I only came to check on him out of kindness. But with your attitude, forget it." Lily stormed away, leaving Ethan's mother collapsed on the ground, seething with hatred. Following me into the hospital room, she hissed, "I don't care. Both of you are responsible. If Ethan doesn't wake up, you'll both take care of him. And me." I rolled my eyes, glancing at Ethan's battered and bruised face on the hospital bed. He was so swollen and disfigured that he was almost unrecognizable. If he knew the kind of things Lily had said after everything he sacrificed for her, I wondered how he would feel. Unfortunately, he was unconscious and completely oblivious to the world. Clicking my tongue in regret, I turned to leave, but then I saw something strange. A faint, translucent figure shaped like Ethan sat up from the bed. Startled, I stumbled backward, stepping on Ethan's mother's foot. "Watch it. Why are you stepping on me?" she snapped, furious, as she swatted at me. Her hand went straight through Ethan's spirit. She couldn't see him, and I didn't dare to look directly. I kept observing his ghostly figure from the corner of my eye. First, he looked shocked, then terrified. Finally, he rushed toward me and waved a hand in front of my face. "Emma, can you see me?" he asked. To my surprise, I could hear him. Was it because I had been reborn? I pretended I couldn't see or hear him, and his expression turned to disappointment as he slumped back onto the edge of the bed. Muttering to himself, Ethan said, "Where's Lily? How is she? Did I manage to protect her this time? Why hasn't she come to see me?" A few nights later, I entered the hospital room during my shift. Ethan's mother was asleep, exhausted after keeping vigil by his bedside. Ethan's spirit sat next to her, mumbling, "My mom's worn out from all this, and Emma doesn't even bother helping out. What kind of girlfriend is she? She can't even stick with me through hard times." His tone grew darker and more resentful as he continued, apparently assuming no one could hear him. "If it weren't for her parents pressuring me, I'd never be with someone like her. She's as stiff as a brick. No softness or tenderness at all. Lily, though even her tears could melt my heart into a puddle. If Emma hadn't interfered, Lily and I would have been together long ago. We'd be perfect for each other." Hearing this, my heart chilled. To Ethan, my past efforts to pursue him, and my parents' support for his career, were nothing but burdens to him. Without their help, he never would have become the youngest vice president in the city's medical system. In our past life, he always acted courteous and respectful in front of my parents, but there was not an ounce of gratitude in him. Anger burned in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral as I jotted down Ethan's condition in my notes, clicked my pen shut, and left the room. As I was leaving, Lily barged in with several reporters and loudly declared, "I want to clarify the rumors circulating online. I'm grateful to Mr. Carter for helping me that day, but claims that we were in a relationship are baseless. Back when we were in school, Ethan did pursue me, but we never dated. I never expected to run into him on the flight, and his actions were truly surprising." She wiped away a crocodile tear, appearing utterly pitiful. Ethan's spirit, however, seemed struck by lightning. He lunged forward, trying to grab her arm, but his hand passed right through. "Lily, what are you saying? What do you mean we never dated? You were even pregnant with my child once." Ethan cried, devastated. Seeing his miserable state, I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. Meanwhile, Lily turned to Ethan's mother, holding her hand with feigned sincerity. "Mrs. Carter, I truly appreciate Ethan's help that day. If there's anything I can do for you, please don't hesitate to ask." she said sweetly. Ethan's mother glared at her and then coldly said, Lily, about Ethan's medical bills. Lily's face paled, but she forced a smile. Don't worry. I'll cover all of it. And since Ethan got injured saving you, you'll also take turns staying with him at night. Right. Ethan's mother pressed further. Lily hesitated for a moment before reluctantly nodding. I can arrange for someone to stay with him. The reporter's live stream was flooded with comments accusing Lily of putting on an act. Under pressure, she agreed to personally take shifts. I had been enjoying the show quietly until Ethan's mother suddenly pointed at me in front of the cameras and said, Emma, you're Ethan's girlfriend. You're going to marry him eventually, so why don't you take this chance to practice caring for him? You and Lily can take turns staying with him. Her tone made it sound as though it was only natural for me to comply. I couldn't help but laugh. Mrs. Carter, I forgot to tell you, Ethan and I already broke up. Ethan's spirit stared at me in disbelief. Broke up? Who agreed to that? When did this happen? Ethan's mother raised her voice. Indignant. You're leaving him now. Just because he's unconscious? How heartless can you be? He's only temporarily in a coma. Once he wakes up, his future will still be bright. And you'll regret it. Ethan's spirit fumed, his translucent form flickering. Emma, wait and see. You'll regret it when Lily and I live happily ever after. Don't you dare come crawling back to me claiming you love me, I said coldly, turning away without sparing a glance at the cameras pointed in my direction. From this moment, I resolved to give him the freedom he seemed to crave. My world was now vast and boundless, free of his chains. Lily stayed behind to care for Ethan, while his mother reluctantly returned home to rest and recharge. Not long after, a colleague approached me with gossip. Emma, your ex-boyfriend is in bad shape. That Lily? Isn't she some minor influencer? She gained a few followers after the plane crash but clearly doesn't care. She came in with her team earlier, and I thought she genuinely wanted to help. Turns out, it was all for show. Just now, Ethan wet himself, and when asked to help clean him up, she rolled her eyes and said, How is that my problem? The colleague sighed. Poor guy. He almost died saving her. On my way past Ethan's room, I noticed the door was ajar. Inside, Lily was setting up a photo shoot, the smell of urine heavy in the air. Pinching her nose, she waved her hand to clear the stench, but the moment the camera focused on her, she broke into a smile, even going as far as to prop Ethan up in bed. Her rough movements caused blood to seep from the fore on his hand, but she ignored it entirely. They say comatose patients need to be turned regularly to avoid bed sores, she said to the camera. I've even learned the proper technique just for this. She demonstrated while recording her tutorial. As soon as the cameras were off, she let go, letting Ethan fall back onto the bed with a loud thud. Wrinkling her nose in disgust, she muttered, That's enough footage. I can't take this anymore. The smell is awful. If it weren't for appearances, I wouldn't have come here. Now I'm stuck paying all his medical bills. What bad luck. I didn't ask him to save me. Ethan's spirit stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief. With every word Lily uttered, his translucent figure grew fainter until, after she kicked the hospital bed in frustration, muttering about how it was his own fault for not wearing a seatbelt, his spirit vanished entirely. But then, his finger twitched. Ethan had woken up. The attending doctor, who was also my mentor, pulled me along to Ethan's room. It was packed with people, buzzing with excitement. Lily was there, front and center with her team, acting overly affectionate. Ethan, you're finally awake, she exclaimed, clasping his hand. You have no idea how worried I was. I've been taking shifts with your mom to care for you. I've even lost weight. She pouted, looking fragile yet determined. But I don't mind at all. You got hurt saving me, and this is the least I could do. She looked like a delicate flower, pretending to support Ethan with her frail body. If I hadn't seen her true colors, I might have believed her performance. Ethan's expression, however, turned cold. He pulled his hand away abruptly and looked away. Lily, I don't want to see you. Leave. Lily froze, panic flashing across her face. What's wrong? Ethan, did I do something to upset you? Tears welled up in her eyes. rolling down her cheeks as the live stream continued. The comment section exploded with outrage. What's Ethan's problem? Lily's been tirelessly caring for him. And this is how he treats her. Poor Lily. She doesn't deserve this. What a jerk. Ethan, unable to explain the truth about his spirit leaving his body, gritted his teeth and forced out a lie. I'm not feeling well. I need some peace and quiet. The doctor frowned. The patient just woke up and needs rest. Ethan's mother quickly shooed everyone out of the room, but not before the cameras captured Lily's tearful departure. Most people watching pitied her even more. I turned to leave as well, but Ethan called out to me, Emma, can we talk? No, I replied without looking back. From that day on, I avoided his room completely. Even when we crossed paths in the hallway, I would quickly walk away, pretending not to see him. Still, thanks to my gossip-loving colleague, I was well informed about his situation. Apparently, Ethan's mother had set up a social media account for him. The story of his heroic rescue had gained him a significant following. Though the comments were divided, many praised him, but others harshly criticized him. One day, Lily visited him again, and somehow, the two ended up being paired as a romantic couple online. To my disbelief, this publicity stunt garnered even more followers. People were now romanticizing their supposed love story. Two young people reconnecting years later, surviving a plane crash together, and rekindling their love. It was like a plot out of a novel. My colleague was furious on my behalf. If I didn't know you were his ex-girlfriend, I might have shipped them too. A childhood crush, reunited on a plane, enduring life and death together. It's the perfect drama. But knowing the truth makes me sick. I paid no mind to the gossip, choosing instead to focus entirely on my studies. In my previous life, I had been a top student, earning scholarships every year. My mentor once told me that with 10 more years of hard work, I could become one of the leading surgeons of my generation. But that ambition was derailed when I married Ethan. I settled into the role of a housewife, managing the household while Ethan busied himself with work. I gave up my medical career, much to the disappointment of my mentor, who eventually severed all contact with me. Every New Year's gift I sent was returned unopened. I thought my sacrifice would bring us happiness and fulfillment. But I never realized that not only did Ethan feel no love for me, he harbored deep resentment. In this life, I decided to devote all my energy to my future. When I approached my mentor to reconcile, I was surprised to find Ethan already there. Pushing aside the wave of nausea, I handed over a gift. My mentor raised an eyebrow with a knowing smile. So, you two have broken up. I opened my mouth to confirm, but Ethan put his arm around my shoulders. We just had a fight, he said smoothly. Emma hasn't forgiven me yet. In front of my mentor, he suddenly stood up and knelt on one knee. Emma, I've thought a lot about this. I can't live without you. Over the years, we've been through so much together, and we get along so well. These past weeks without you by my side, I felt a deep void in my life. Today, with our mentor here, I want to take this opportunity to propose. Emma, will you marry me? He looked up at me with a self-assured smile, as though he was certain I couldn't possibly refuse. He presented a simple, plain ring, likely less than 3 carats and with no embellishments. Typical Ethan. Always stingy. In my previous life, his family's financial struggles didn't stop him from buying me a 3-carat diamond ring. I had been so moved I cried, convinced he had poured all his romantic energy into that moment. He had proposed with balloons, roses, and even a princess tiara. I truly believed he would cherish me forever, so I had agreed without hesitation. I willingly stepped into the grave of marriage, promising to support him while he pursued his ambitions. But my willingness became a weapon he used against me. The beautiful dreams I once had turned into a sharp blade that tore me apart, leaving me restless and broken. Now, Ethan reached for my wrist to slide the ring onto my finger. I flicked my hand, sending the ring tumbling to the ground, where it rolled away and disappeared into a crack. His face darkened. Emma, what is the meaning of this? How long are you going to keep this up? He stood, his tone impatient. Yes, I was with Lily before, but that's all in the past. If the rumors online are upsetting you, those were all arranged by my mom for publicity. I can delete my account for you if it bothers you so much. He spoke as if this was a great concession, even daring to question me. I used to think you were so understanding. What's gotten into you this time? Our mentor, unwilling to involve himself in our personal drama, excused himself to the kitchen to prepare fruit. I remained seated at the table, calmly unwrapping the gift I had brought. Without looking up, I said, Ethan, we've broken up. I'm not joking. He grabbed my arm. Broken up? I didn't agree to that. I stopped what I was doing, turning to meet his gaze with cold, steady eyes. Ethan, if you were given another chance, knowing what kind of person Lily truly is, would you still choose to save her? As a doctor, what is your duty? To save lives no matter the cost? Or is there more to it? He froze, his face pale as he staggered back against the wall. A look of realization and confusion crossed his face as he murmured, Emma, you too. I stood and continued, my voice firm. Ethan, I'm not a saint. I won't forgive you. Ethan left early, his expression complicated. My mentor didn't press for details but instead placed a human anatomy model in front of me. The joints, organs, and pressure points were all in their proper places, a perfect representation of the human form. Textbooks only teach the basics, he said. In reality, anomalies exist, like a heart growing on the right side or someone having two uteruses. Models show the most typical cases, but life is full of exceptions. Even the golden ratio isn't universal. You asked about a doctor's duty. There's no definitive answer. A doctor's role is to save lives, but whether to sacrifice oneself to save another is a personal choice. Each choice is valid, and each deserves respect. He poured a cup of tea and pushed it toward me with a gentle smile. Emma, if you haven't found your answer yet, there's no rush. Your life is still long, and you have plenty of time to figure it out. I suddenly recalled the afternoon I received my graduate exam results. I had come across a news article about an earthquake that devastated a small town. Buildings collapsed into deep cracks in the earth, leaving countless victims trapped beneath the rubble. Meanwhile, in a distant city, medical teams were making their final preparations to rush to the disaster zone. My mentor had led the team during that mission. Even as aftershocks continued, they wrote letters of commitment, prepared their wills, and were ready to risk their lives to give hope to the people trapped in the disaster zone. During a brief break, a sweat-drenched journalist managed to snag my mentor for a 10-second interview, pulling down his mask, which left deep red marks on his face, his skin pale and swollen from the long hours. He said with worry-filled eyes, I don't have time to say much, but I just hope my team comes back safe. He then immediately went back to the rescue efforts, working tirelessly under the starlit skies. My mentor had been chosen for me by my parents, and I had hesitated about studying under him, but after reading that news report, I sent him a heartfelt email, asking to become his student. In the following years, I accompanied him to various missions, big and small. Yet, later, I confined myself to the narrow world of family life and forgot how my heart once beat passionately for the duty of saving lives. The next time I saw Ethan was at the hospital. I was delivering documents to the department head and overheard them talking privately. The department head looked troubled. Ethan, it's not that we don't want you back, but after a comprehensive evaluation, we've concluded that your current condition isn't suitable for returning to surgery. You know how important a surgeon's hands are. How about this? We can transfer you to a logistics role. What do you think? Ethan's face darkened immediately. He swept all the documents off the desk. And if the desk hadn't been so heavy, he might have overturned it as well. What do you mean by this? My abilities are well known. Putting me in logistics is a complete waste of talent. Before I could stifle a laugh, the department head chuckled, unable to hold it back. Twirling a pen between his fingers, he said, Ethan, you've been flattered so much you've started believing it. Sure, your education is decent, but at our hospital, you could throw a brick and hit 2 Harvard graduates. You think you can just waltz in here, go straight into surgery, and then land a consulting role in 2 years? Please, it's only because of your abilities. Right. He sneered. Let me give you some advice as a senior. If you're with that influencer, Lily, then focus on that. Make your money from the influencer gig. Without this hospital, what are you really? Reality is harsh. Ethan's arrogance was unshaken. He always believed that the things he felt restrained him. The people who held him back were, in fact, the wings that allowed him to soar. Without those wings, no matter how high his starting point, he would crash and burn. Humiliated, especially upon realizing I had overheard everything, Ethan's face turned ashen. He stood abruptly and stormed out. "Don't underestimate me. I broke through medical barriers and solved research challenges on my own intellect. I don't need this place to prove myself. I won't settle for logistics. I quit." He left without a backup plan. Meanwhile, I had dedicated myself entirely to my studies, from assisting in surgeries to eventually leading procedures. I climbed steadily. I reclaimed the knowledge I had once let slip and gained even more under my mentor's guidance. Lessons and experiences he had never taught me before. My personal skills grew rapidly, leaving me no time to follow Ethan's latest drama. That is, until a coworker rushed in, waving their phone and shouting for me to come see the commotion outside the hospital. Apparently, Ethan's mother had caused a scene. She and her accomplices unfurled a long banner at the hospital entrance, accusing the hospital of being heartless. It read that Ethan had injured his hand while saving someone. Yet the hospital dismissed him without compassion because he was no longer useful. She claimed they were struggling to make ends meet and couldn't even afford to eat. My coworker rolled her eyes. That mother and son are disgusting. When the drama with Lily was hot, they were raking in cash from all the attention. Now that their popularity has faded, and no one's buying it, they're coming after the hospital. Ethan arrived in a hurry, ostensibly to take his mother away. I thought he was being sincere, but in front of the live streaming cameras, he put on quite the show. "Mom, don't do this. My hands can't perform surgery anymore. So it's only fair that the hospital let me go. It's okay. I'm still healthy. If I can't work here, I can always deliver food or drive for a rideshare app. There are ways to make money." The internet exploded with sympathy for Ethan and outrage against the hospital. I couldn't believe how well he played the victim. Ethan Carter, a delicate little white lotus. My parents, however, saw through it. "Let's just pay them off and put this to rest," my father said. On the other hand, couldn't swallow my anger. My mother patted my hand. "Think of it as paying to see someone's true colors. We used to think Ethan was a decent kid. Who knew he'd turn out to be so vile?" She sighed. "Good thing you broke up with him. If you had married him and found out too late, we'd be heartbroken." Her words brought tears to my eyes. In my past life, after I died, my parents aged overnight, blaming themselves for not protecting me enough. Later, when they discovered the truth, they sought revenge by running Ethan down with their car, killing him. They didn't escape the law and spent the rest of their lives in prison. In every timeline, my parents gave everything for me. Now, in this life, they still worried about me. Their love was unwavering, no matter the circumstances. They have always loved me unconditionally, and this time, I won't stay silent. Ethan and Lily arranged to meet me at a cafe, their intentions clear from the start. As soon as I sat down, Lily sweetly but firmly stated, "I want $5 million, not a cent less." She smiled as if this was a casual, reasonable request. "And you?" I turned coldly to Ethan. He avoided my gaze, staring at the table as if hoping it would swallow him. After a long pause, he finally said, "My demands aren't that high. I just want to return to the hospital, continue consulting patients, and not be relegated to logistics for the rest of my life." I chuckled softly. It was almost amusing to see Ethan still clinging to his so-called professional aspirations. Taking a sip of my coffee, I shrugged. "Sorry, but I can't agree to either of your demands." I met Ethan's startled gaze. "You know better than anyone, Ethan, that your claims about the hospital being unfair are baseless. The hospital never said they would fire you. They offered to transfer you to logistics because your hand injury made it unsafe for you to operate. And yet, you turned around and accused them of betrayal. Isn't that laughable?" I stood, grabbing my bag, ready to leave, but Ethan grabbed my arm, his voice desperate. "Emma, please listen. I don't need money. Just let me return to the surgical department. I'll even forego operations. I just want to stay on the front lines." "Ethan, are you insane?" Lily suddenly snapped. stomping her stiletto heel into his foot and kicking him hard. We agreed on 5 million. I took a risk using my most popular account to livestream for you. I won't take a penny less. Ethan shoved her back reflexively. Lily stumbled, falling backward and slamming her head against the wall. She clutched her chest, her face pale as death. In that instant, my mind raced through a storm of thoughts: resentment, ethics, morality, the value of life. The scales tipped back and forth in my heart until I remembered the vow I made when I chose to become a doctor: to honor life, treat all equally, and respect humanity, even when faced with a heinous criminal. It's not a doctor's role to judge or punish. That's the law's responsibility. A doctor's duty is to preserve life, and I will always hold that sacred. What are you standing there for? I pushed Ethan aside, my expression serious. Where's Lily's medication? Ethan hesitated, frozen in place, impatient. I knelt beside Lily and began performing CPR. Ethan remained motionless, as though he wasn't a doctor and the woman before him wasn't someone he once claimed to love so much that he would sacrifice everything for her. How pathetic. Thankfully, I found her medication in her coat pocket, quickly administering it. Lily, still pale, regained some strength and muttered weakly, "Don't think saving me will make me forgive you. Emma, if it weren't for you chasing after Ethan, he wouldn't have left me. He loved me. He just couldn't let go of your family's power and influence. Why should someone like you, with money and privilege, always be above others?" Her words left me unfazed. The truth no longer stirred any emotions in me. I simply placed the pill bottle back into her bag and replied calmly, "Don't think saving you means I'll let you go, either. Life's value surpasses all else, and it's not a doctor's place to judge morality." Later, I pieced together security footage of Ethan rejecting the logistics transfer and audio recordings from our cafe meeting. The completed video exposed the truth in full detail. I also included a lengthy statement explaining the events from start to finish, ensuring every fact was laid bare. Then, I hit send. The internet erupted. Public opinion surged like a tidal wave. Some condemned the hospital for allowing its reputation to be tarnished by a few bad apples, while others criticized Ethan and Lily harshly. The incident sparked heated debates about the ethical boundaries of doctors and whether one should sacrifice themselves for others. Amid the chaos, I stepped back, no longer interested in the uproar. I had already found my answer when I chose to save Lily. My duty as a doctor compelled me to save her, but my moral compass led me to use the law to protect myself and bring justice to those who wronged me. Ethan and Lily were convicted of fraud. Lily's account was confiscated by her company, and her contract termination left her with substantial debt. Ethan's mother, deemed an accomplice, received a 1-year suspended sentence. Ethan's mother pleaded with me multiple times, even kneeling in the street during her final attempt. Exhausted, I agreed to visit Ethan in prison. He wore a prison uniform and had a shaved head. When he saw me, he immediately clung to the bars, his face lighting up with desperation. "Emma, save me. I know I was wrong. I was so stupid, blinded by Lily's lies. I thought she was kind, but she manipulated me. I've realized my mistakes. I spoke to a lawyer. They said if your family writes a letter of forgiveness, I might still have a chance." I cut him off coldly. "You called me here just to say this?" His face was filled with regret, but his eyes were dark and unreadable. I could tell he hadn't truly changed. Somewhere in his heart, he still saw me as the girl who would forgive him with a single word, who would take him back no matter what. But that was because I loved him. And now, I didn't. I turned and walked away, ignoring his anguished screams. Outside, my mentor called. "Ready to go?" "All packed and waiting," I replied. "A few days ago, I received an email about a program to bring medical services to remote areas. The destination was a village called Saltwater, and I had just passed my board exams. Without hesitation, I signed up for the year-long assignment. My mother disapproved. Why not stay here, advance your skills, publish research papers, and tackle medical challenges? Isn't that every doctor's ultimate dream? Your father and I can help you achieve that much faster." It was a tempting offer, but I chose a different path. I wanted to become someone like my mentor. One day, I hope to wield a scalpel not only to pave the way for a brighter era in Chinese medicine, but also to gently carve out the warmth of life.